Hi, friend. Welcome to Rainy Tales, a quiet place for gentle stories told beneath the sound of rain. Now, let's begin tonight's story. The candle flickers softly, its small flame swaying in rhythm with the hush of rain outside. The sound is gentle, not loud, not rushed, just steady enough to fill the silence between breaths. The room smells of jasmine and old paper, the faint sweetness of tea cooling beside an open journal. Somewhere beyond the fogged window, the city sleeps, wrapped in layers of drizzle and silver light. It has been raining since dusk. The kind of rain that never quite stops, only changes its tone, from whispers to sighs, from sighs to stillness. I sit near the window, knees pulled close, holding the warm cup as if it could anchor me to this moment. I've always found comfort in nights like this. Nights that ask for nothing but stillness, where even grief feels softer, less sharp. The candle's light trembles across the pages of my journal, the ink blurred where tears once fell. I don't remember when I last wrote here. Perhaps it was the winter after she left. The words that remain are half finished, trailing off mid-sentence, like the conversations we never completed, the promises left in the air. I touch the paper gently, tracing the grooves of letters pressed too hard, like I was trying to make the feeling stay. Outside, rain pools in the corners of the window pane, gathering into tiny rivers that slide down the glass. I follow one with my eyes, watching how it curves, hesitates, then disappears. There's something beautiful in how water moves, how it yields and still finds a way forward. I wonder if healing works like that too. Quiet, unseen, always moving toward some softer place. I take another sip of tea. It's gone lukewarm now, but the taste carries me back to the old cafe near the river, where we used to sit watching the rain blur the streetlights. She loved jasmine tea, said it smelled like peace. I didn't understand then. I only drank it because she did. Now I can't make a cup without thinking of her laughter. How it used to fill small spaces like light fills glass. The rain grows steadier, pattering against the window in even rhythm. I close my eyes and let the sound pull me inward. It's strange how something outside can quiet the storm inside. The more I listen, the less it hurts. The more I breathe, the more the ache softens into something else. Not gone, but different. Like the flame that bends, it does not break. I open my eyes again. The candle's wax has melted into a small pool, catching reflections of gold and silver from the window. For a moment, I see her face there. Not clearly, just the suggestion of her smile in the light. And it doesn't ache the way it used to. It simply feels like she's saying goodnight. The clock ticks softly on the shelf. Midnight passes quietly, unnoticed except by the rain. The city hums beneath the storm, a lullaby for anyone still awake. I place my journal aside and rest my hand near the candle, feeling the faint warmth brush against my skin. There's a stillness here that doesn't feel empty anymore. Maybe healing isn't something that arrives all at once. Maybe it's what happens when you stop waiting for the hurt to end. When you sit beside it, offer it tea, and listen to the rain together. Outside, a single car passes through the wet street, its headlights bending in the puddles. The world feels distant, but kind. The candle's flame leans toward me, a small reminder that even the smallest light can make a room feel alive. I whisper a quiet thank you, to the night, to the rain, to the silence that holds me without question. Then I close my eyes again. The sound of rain softens. The candle flickers once, then steadies. The room breathes with me, slow, calm, forgiving. And in that stillness, I realize peace doesn't come when everything is fixed. It comes when we finally stop fighting the rain. The rain is still falling by morning. Not heavy, not loud, just a thin mist that drifts across the glass like breath. The candle from last night has melted down to a pool of wax, frozen mid-drip. The cup sits empty now, faintly stained with tea and memory. The world outside feels pale and slow, as if time has stretched itself to make space for quiet. I sit again by the window, watching the light seep through the clouds. There's something honest about mornings after rain. The air smells like stone and soil, clean and heavy at once. The sky hangs low, pressing close enough to touch. I pull the blanket tighter around my shoulders and listen to the steady rhythm of water finding its way through the gutters. The ache in my chest is gentler now, but it's still there, that familiar weight that has lived beneath my ribs for too long. It doesn't hurt the way it once did. It simply reminds me that I have loved deeply enough to be changed. I used to think grief was something to overcome, to silence, or to cure. But lately, I think it's more like rain, something that passes through, something that nourishes even as it soaks you to the bone. Some mornings I wake with that heaviness pressing against my lungs like fog before dawn. It doesn't ask for attention. It just lingers, quiet and sure. I've learned not to fight it. I let it sit with me, let it be part of my breathing. Because maybe pain just wants to be seen. Not fixed, not solved, just noticed. On the sill lies a smooth river stone, one she picked up years ago from the coast. It feels like the sea is still holding it, she said then, pressing it into my palm. The stone is cool and small, perfectly round. I still keep it near the window, where light and rain can touch it. Sometimes I hold it when I write. Its weight steadies me, a small reminder that even the hardest things can be shaped into something soft, something meant to fit gently in the hand. I think of how water does that, carving edges, smoothing roughness, not through force, but through patience. Maybe that's how healing works too. Slow erosion, quiet transformation. It doesn't demand. It just keeps moving, shaping what it touches until the sharpness fades. The rain outside begins to thin, breaking into separate drops that tap softly on the leaves below. A bird calls faintly from somewhere unseen, its voice fragile, uncertain. I realize I haven't opened the window in weeks. So I do, and the air rushes in, cold and damp, wrapping me in its scent. For a moment, it feels like standing at the edge of something wide and forgiving. I breathe in, long and deep. The air tastes like earth after sorrow, like new beginnings that don't announce themselves. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell hums through the mist. I close my eyes and let the sound travel through me. The note lingers in my chest long after it fades. I remember the first months after she was gone, how even breathing felt like work. I filled my days with noise, with movement, trying to stay ahead of silence. But silence has a way of catching up. It finds you in the in-between, in the pause between sentences, in the half-light before morning, in the drip of water from the roof. It waits until you stop running. And when you finally do, it doesn't scold you for being broken. It simply sits beside you and says, "Here, rest now." That's what this rain feels like. An old friend who knows when to speak and when to simply stay. It has watched me through every season, through every lonely night when I thought I'd forgotten how to feel warmth. And somehow, it never stopped coming back. I reach for the cup again and pour a fresh brew of jasmine tea. Steam curls into the room like soft fingers, tracing invisible shapes in the air. I watch it rise, disappear, and rise again. Maybe this is what it means to heal, not to erase the pain, but to move with it until it becomes part of your rhythm. The tea tastes sweeter this morning. The candle is gone, but the light from outside feels kind enough. The rain hums low against the window, a quiet song for what was lost and what remains. I rest the cup against my chest, feeling the faint warmth through the porcelain. And I whisper to no one in particular, maybe to her, maybe to the rain, I'm still here. And somehow that feels enough. Outside, a soft wind passes through the street, scattering tiny blossoms from the tree across the pavement. They land, gather, and drift, like little fragments of grace carried wherever the rain allows. I watch them until they blur into silver and green, my breath falling into rhythm with the storm's slow heart. There is no sudden clarity, no revelation. Just this, a morning washed clean, the weight inside me settling into something gentler. Not gone, not forgotten, just quieter. And for now, that is enough. The letter is tucked where the ribbon of my journal crosses itself, a thin page softened by many seasons of touching and returning. I slide it free and feel the slight tremble of old paper, the way time loosens fibers until they sigh at every fold. The ink has faded to a gentle brown. The edge is rough as if the page once tasted rain and kept a memory of it. I know what it says before I read it. I also know what it never managed to say. I rest the letter on the table and smooth it with my palm. Outside, the morning is still pale, the rain a fine weave on the window. Steam walks up from the fresh cup of jasmine tea. The room holds its breath with me as I begin. Dear, the name is there, but even now I only hear the hush behind it. My younger handwriting leans forward, eager and unsure, each letter a small step taken too quickly. I can see the hurry in the strokes, the fear that if I paused, the heart would change its mind. The date in the corner belongs to the edge of winter, the week everything felt like thin ice. I remember the ache in my hand after writing, the way my fingers ached as if they too were holding on too tightly. I read the first lines, and the room seems to fold around the sound of them. They are simple confessions, promises made out of hope and fear, and the wish to make something last by naming it. I can hear the younger ache behind each word. Please stay. Please hear me. Please believe that I can be softer than my sorrow, stronger than my storms. I swallow, and the taste of jasmine feels close to tears. There is a sentence that wanders, never quite arriving. It starts with, I know I am not easy when the nights are long, but, and then it stumbles, catching on its own longing, circling, apologizing too much. I smile at it now, not in mockery, but with sympathy. I remember wanting to be good enough to deserve gentleness. I remember setting gentleness far away, as if it was something earned after perfecting every flaw. I did not know yet that gentleness is what teaches us how to soften, not the prize for already being soft. The rain shifts, a slightly heavier curtain, and I pause to listen. The sound helps. It lifts me out of the old rooms in my mind and brings me back to the one I'm in. A window, a table, a candle stub, a stone on the sill, a cup warming both hands. I breathe in and read on. There is a paragraph where I try to explain what I cannot explain. I stack images to replace certainty. The river in late autumn, the bridge that hummed when the wind pressed through its cables, the way her laughter made even difficult days feel like light through clean glass. I can tell I was trying to build a shelter out of sentences, to make a small house where we could both stand and not be cold. I did not know that houses built from fear shake in the first wind. Halfway down the page, the letters grow larger, as if my younger self thought volume could carry meaning where clarity could not. I will do better, the line says, twice, 3 times, then once more with a firmer hand. I touch the words without judgment. I am tempted to whisper back to that younger voice, to say, you are already doing the best you could with what you had. You did not need to be a future version of yourself to be worthy of love. You did not need to promise 100 sons. You only needed to be here, the way a candle is, small and honest. A letter never quite finishes. It runs out of breath just when it begins to say the most important thing. If you decide to go, it tries, then stops. The last line drifts into a pen mark, a small black lake where the neeb rested too long. I remember the moment. The rain was harder that night. The window sang with it. I sat with the pen and felt the truth like a door opening onto cold air. Part of love is letting it be love, even when it changes shape. Part of love is not holding it so tightly that it cannot breathe. I fold the letter back along its old lines, but I do not put it away. I rest it beside the cup and look at it as if it were a photograph you can listen to. Between the lines, I hear the younger ache asking for a map. I do not have one, not even now. But I do have a compass I lacked then, the simple north of being kind to myself, of letting pain be a guest who does not need to perform to be permitted a chair. The rain runs in threads down the glass, and the city beyond looks softer, as if the world has decided to speak in whispers until someone rests. I reach for the stone on the sill and hold it in my palm while I read the letter one more time, slower. The second reading hurts less. It is as if the room has learned how to listen without tightening. I think of how often we try to fix the past by rewriting it in our heads. We picture sharper arguments, clearer sentences, more elegant exits. But grace does not always rewrite. Sometimes it simply rests a hand on the page and warms the ink until the edges blur. Imagine what the last paragraph might have been if I had known then what I know now. It would have been small. It would have said, "Thank you for the seasons we walked together. I am learning how to breathe without asking the air to belong to me. If you go, I will bless the path beneath your feet, and if you stay, I will bless the path between us. Either way, I will try to be a kinder place to live." A draft of that paragraph forms in my mind and then dissolves, not needed. I fold the letter and slide it back into the journal, ribbon over ribbon, not as a wound to keep pressing, but as a keepsake of who I was when love taught me its first difficult lessons. I am not angry at that version of me. I am grateful. They sat in a small room with a storm and refused to shut their heart. They wrote even when the ink shook. They believed there must be a soft way through. The rain eases into a fine lace, and light finds its way along the floorboards. I lift the cup and sip. The tea has cooled, but the scent rises, steady and kind. I look at the window and see my reflection layered with rain and sky, and the blur of a passing umbrella far below. For a breath, everything is held together, the then and the now, the letter and the silence where it stopped, the ache and the mercy that has begun to cover it like moss on stone. I close the journal and rest both hands over it, not to keep anything in, but to feel the quiet moving beneath the cover. I do not need to send the letter. I do not need to finish it. Its work is done. It carried me across a difficult night to the softer morning that followed. It taught me that sometimes words are bridges you build for yourself, not to chase someone, but to cross your own river. Outside, a small wind lifts the rain like a veil. The room feels lighter, as if someone opened a door in a house I didn't know I lived inside. I lean back, breathe, and let the day find me. Rain drifts down the window like slow handwriting, tracing lines that vanish before they can be read. The glass holds layers of the world, my faint reflection, the soft light of the candle, the silver threads of falling water, and somewhere beyond all that, the blurred pulse of the city breathing beneath clouds. I watch it quietly, chin resting on my hand, and think how strange it is to see myself only when the light outside fades. The window has always been a mirror of sorts. It doesn't show everything, only what the moment allows. Sometimes, when the night is deep and the room is bright, it reflects me back so clearly that it feels like a conversation. Other times, when the sky is brighter than I am, I disappear entirely, swallowed by rain and distance. Maybe that's how healing works too. Some days you see yourself, and some days you just see the world moving through you. This morning feels like both. There's a rhythm to the rain, a pulse steady enough to build memory around. I remember another window, another lifetime ago. That one opened toward the river. its panes framed by ivy that curled like soft handwriting. She used to stand there in the evenings, touching the glass lightly with her fingertips, as if she could draw warmth from the other side. I remember watching her reflection, how her face blurred when the rain came, how it looked both close and far, like someone I was still learning to reach. I wonder what she saw when she looked out or in. Maybe she saw herself in the water, the current carrying things she didn't have words for. Maybe she saw the same thing I see now, the way life keeps folding and unfolding, a tide that never truly stops. I close my eyes and lean my forehead against the cool pane. The chill seeps in slowly, grounding me. There's something sacred about moments like this, where you don't need to speak or fix or plan. You just exist between breaths, between raindrops, between the versions of yourself that keep coming and going. When I open my eyes again, the city looks softer. The rain has thinned to a fine mist, the kind that hovers rather than falls. A figure passes below, a woman with a dark umbrella, walking at the careful pace of someone who has accepted getting a little wet. She pauses at the corner to let a car pass, then continues without hurry. I envy that ease, that quiet trust in the weather. I press my hand against the glass, palm open. My reflection meets me halfway. For a second, I imagine her standing beside me again, both of us watching the same rain, neither needing to fill the silence. If she were here, I think she'd tell me that the world never really stops breaking our hearts. It just teaches us gentler ways to hold the pieces. A droplet gathers at the edge of the window and falls, leaving a thin trail behind. I follow it with my eyes, the way a child follows a bird across the sky. It disappears into the seam of the frame, unseen but still there, moving toward the earth. It reminds me of something she once said, maybe everything we lose just changes form. Maybe nothing really leaves. At the time, I didn't believe her. I thought losing meant endings. I thought goodbye meant absence. Now, years later, I look at the rain and realize she might have been right. The things we lose, people, moments, versions of ourselves, they return in other shapes. In scent, in song, in the quiet way light spills through the blinds. Even the ache of remembering is a kind of return. The candle's flame shivers as a draft, slides through the cracks of the window frame. I cup my hand around it until it steadies again. Watching it, I think about fragility, how easy it is to snuff out, and yet how stubbornly it keeps burning. There is something deeply human in that persistence, to keep glowing, even when surrounded by wind. I take another sip of tea. It's cool now, but still fragrant. The taste lingers like a note at the end of a song. Across the table, my journal waits open, a blank page ready. I don't write anything yet. I just look at the paper and the soft rain shadows trembling on its surface. Maybe not everything needs to become words. Maybe silence can tell the story better, the kind of story that sits beneath the ribs and hums. I lift my eyes to the window again. The reflection shifts. My face dissolves into the sky, into the gray-blue of moving clouds. The light catches the rim of the cup, turning the tea into a small pool of gold. Everything feels both fragile and infinite. For the first time in a long time, I don't wish to go back. I don't wish to undo or relive. I only wish to stay here, in this room, with this rain, in this quiet space between who I was and who I'm still becoming. I whisper softly to the glass, thank you, not to anyone in particular, but to the moment itself, for holding me, for showing me that reflection isn't always about the past. Sometimes it's just about seeing yourself clearly enough to stay present. Outside, the woman with the umbrella has turned the corner and vanished from sight. The rain keeps falling, soft and steady, erasing her footsteps as soon as they're made. I watch until the world turns to blur again, until the light bends and my reflection fades back into shadow. The candle flickers. The tea cools. The window hums. And I sit there, letting the rain do what it does best, wash what doesn't need to be carried anymore. The afternoon passes in shades of gray and silver. The rain, after lingering for hours, finally begins to thin, not ending, just softening into a hush, so delicate that it sounds like the world breathing. I decide to step outside for the first time in days. The air feels cool against my skin, almost tender, as if the storm had been waiting for me to open the door. The street glistens like polished stone. Puddles hold fragments of the sky, trembling with each new drop that falls. The air is thick with the scent of earth, that rich, dark fragrance that only comes after rain, when the ground exhales and everything feels newly awake. I pull my coat tighter and start walking, letting my steps find their rhythm without thought or purpose. There's something different about the world after rain. It's quieter but fuller, as though everything is listening. The leaves, heavy with water, hang low enough to brush against my shoulders. Every few steps, a droplet slides from one onto my sleeve, like a small reminder that the storm isn't entirely gone. I look up and watch how the clouds pull apart slowly, revealing faint light behind them. The sky, like the heart, never clears all at once. I turn down the path that runs alongside the small park near the river. The gravel crunches beneath my shoes, still damp and soft. The benches glisten with thin sheets of water, their wooden slats reflecting faint amber from the street lamps that have already begun to glow. I find a dry patch under a willow tree and sit. From here, I can see the river swelling gently against the banks, carrying bits of fallen leaves and thin branches, everything the rain has gathered and decided to return. For a while, I just breathe. Each inhale feels deeper, easier. The air smells alive, green and clean, edged with the faint sweetness of moss. It feels like the kind of scent that belongs to beginnings, even if you're not sure what's beginning yet. Across the river, someone is walking their dog, both of them silhouettes against the pale fog. The dog pauses, shakes the water from its fur, and the sound makes me smile, that simple act of shaking off the storm. It's a lesson I keep relearning. The willow's branches sway gently above me, their tips dripping onto the grass like soft metronomes. I reach out and let one brush against my hand. The leaf is cool, almost slick, but alive. Touching it feels like touching the edge of time, something that has been here before me and will stay after I go. It's humbling and somehow comforting. The world smells of renewal, and I think of how pain does this too, how it clears space. It washes through us, pulling loose everything that's been clinging too tightly, leaving us raw but clean. It doesn't erase what was there before, but it makes room for light to return. When I was younger, I used to believe healing would come like lightning, fast, clear, undeniable. Now I know it's more like this walk after rain, slow, unhurried. You notice it only when you stop trying to. The puddles no longer mirror the storm, but the sky beginning again. I glance down at my reflection in the shallow water near the roots. My face looks softer than I remember, the edges blurred by ripples. I look peaceful maybe, or just tired in a kinder way. For a moment, I see her beside me, not as she was, but as a feeling. Not absence, not presence, something in between. A quiet knowing that love doesn't vanish. It simply changes form. The way rain becomes rivered out the wind picks up, carrying the faint hum of chimes from a balcony nearby. I listen, smiling. Every note feels like an answer I didn't know I was waiting for. I think about how she loved sound, the small, unnoticed ones, the kettle beginning to sing, the creak of floorboards, the sigh of a closing door. The world is always talking, she used to say. We just forget how to listen. I've been listening lately. To the rain, to the silence, to the heartbeat of things that don't need to be said. It's strange. The quieter life becomes, the more alive it feels. A patch of sunlight breaks through the clouds, landing on the far side of the river. It glows for a moment, turning the water into molten gold. I stand and watch, my breath fogging in the cool air. The warmth never quite reaches me, but that's all right. Some beauty is meant to be observed, not held. The path home is softer now, less lonely. The rain's footprints remain, small silver puddles, glimmers of where it's been. I step carefully between them, though I know it doesn't matter if I splash. The world is wet and alive, and for once, I am part of it rather than apart from it. As I near the corner, I notice a single blossom fallen from the willow, pale, fragile, resting in the grass. I pick it up and hold it in my palm. It's torn, slightly bruised, but beautiful all the same. I press it lightly between the pages of my notebook when I get home. Not as a symbol, just as a small truth, that even after the storm, something tender remains. By the time I close the door behind me, the last of the rain has stopped. A candle waits on the table, the cup beside it. I light the wick, pour the tea, and sit once more by the window. Outside, the street glimmers, washed clean. Inside, the air feels new again, like the quiet after forgiveness. And I realize as I breathe in the warmth, maybe healing doesn't arrive with fanfare. Maybe it's simply the decision to step outside after the rain, to feel the world again, and to keep walking, one soft step at a time. The night returns quietly, wrapping the sky in a velvet shade of blue. The street outside glows faintly under lamplight, each puddle reflecting a fragment of that warm yellow. The rain has stopped, but the world still hums with its memory. The scent of wet soil, the hush that lingers after a long cry. I sit by the window again, the same place, the same candle. Yet something inside me has changed, something small, almost unnoticeable, like the shift of wind before dawn. I take a slow sip of tea and feel the warmth settle beneath my ribs. It's the kind of warmth that doesn't demand attention. It just stays. I think of how, for years, I tried to outrun the ache by giving it names that sounded like strength, endurance, acceptance, survival. But pain, I've learned, softens when you give it a gentler name. So tonight, I call mine weather. Weather changes. It comes, it stays, it leaves. It teaches you to dress for its moods, not to curse its timing. You don't argue with rain. You open an umbrella, or you walk through it. I smile at the thought. How many nights I spent trying to reason with sorrow, as if it were a person who might apologize. But grief never apologizes. It simply rains. And sometimes, that's all it needs to do. I place my cup down and open my notebook. On the page, I write small words, one at a time, as if speaking to a child. You are not broken. You are weathered. The difference is subtle, but it feels like a truth I can live with. Broken things are waiting to be fixed. Weathered things have already survived the storm. The candle wavers as a soft wind presses through the window's edge. Its flame leans, steadies, leans again, almost breathing with me. I remember something she once said. When the wind shakes the flame, it doesn't mean it's dying. It's just learning to dance differently. I hadn't understood it then. I do now. Maybe pain doesn't vanish. Maybe it just learns to move more gracefully within you. I glance at the wall where the shadows of raindrops used to flicker. Now, only the light moves there, a golden pulse across the paint. I think of how often I feared the dark parts of myself, the regrets, the doubts, the versions of me that falter. I used to hide them behind smiles, behind busyness, behind words. But hiding never healed anything. It only made the ache lonelier. So lately, I've been trying something new. I sit with it. I call my pain by name, but I give it softer ones. ones that make room for mercy. Sadness becomes memory. Loneliness becomes space. Fear becomes care. And when I name them gently, they change their posture. They sit down. They breathe. They stop asking to be fought outside. A soft breeze stirs the branches. The leaves rustle, whispering against the quiet. I imagine the world talking in its own language, one that says, "You are not the storm. You are what remains after it." I close my eyes and listen. Somewhere nearby, a cat pads along the wet pavement. A window shuts softly. The air smells of cedar and rain. There's no music playing, yet the silence hums with melody. Maybe it's my heartbeat, or maybe it's the sound of peace arriving, not all at once, but slowly, tenderly, like dusk fading into night. When I open my eyes again, the candle's flame has calmed. Its reflection glows in the window, a tiny echo against the darkness outside. I can see both flames, the one before me and the one in the glass, and for a moment, they seem to breathe together. Two lights, one real, one reflected, both fragile and both enough. I think of the years I spent trying to become someone untouched by sorrow, someone certain and unshakable. But now I realize, being unshakable isn't the goal. Being gentle is. The heart isn't meant to be armor. It's meant to be a garden, open, alive, sometimes overgrown, but always capable of growing something new. So I whisper it softly, a kind of prayer, though not to any God I know. May I stay soft. May I call my pain by its kinder name. May I let every storm leave something growing behind. The words float into the quiet, and I imagine them landing somewhere, on the table, in the air, maybe even outside among the leaves. The candle burns lower. The wax forms small pools that glisten like pale honey. I reach for my cup and find it empty, but warm enough to hold. I stay like that for a long while, hands around warmth, eyes half closed, heart steady. Outside, the night deepens. The stars hide behind thin clouds, and the moon hums faintly through mist. Somewhere, water drips from a rooftop, rhythmic and patient. I think again of that single word, weather. I smile. Maybe that's what we are, storms passing through one another, leaving traces of light behind. And as the wind brushes against the window once more, I whisper to the darkness, not as a plea, but as a thank you for staying. Because tonight, for the first time in a long time, I feel like I've stayed 2 steam curls upward from the new cup of jasmine tea, spiraling slowly like the breath of something alive. I sit cross-legged on the wooden floor, the window cracked open just enough for the scent of rain to drift in. The world outside is quiet again, not silent, but soft. A rhythm of dripping from the eaves, the low hum of distant traffic, the occasional sigh of the wind moving through the branches. It feels like the kind of night meant for warmth, for remembering that the body still knows peace. I wrap both hands around the cup, letting its heat seep into my palms. The warmth travels up my arms, loosening muscles that have stayed tense for too many months. I hadn't realized how much I'd forgotten the simple language of comfort, how a small thing, like holding something warm, could remind the body it belongs here. The first sip is delicate, jasmine and honey, a taste that holds memory without demanding it. I breathe through it, slow, steady. Healing, I think, might be nothing more than small acts of warmth repeated. A cup of tea, a candle lit, a breath taken on purpose. Not grand gestures, not sudden awakenings. Just warmth returning, quietly. The candle on the table flickers and steadies, the flame leaning toward me, as if listening. I find myself speaking softly into the air. Not to anyone, not even to her, just to the space itself. I'm still learning, I say. Still learning how to stay. I think of how often we wait for life to feel new again, as though healing were a doorway we could step through. But maybe it's more like this tea, heat that seeps in slowly, finding the cold places one by one. You don't notice it at first. You just realize one day that you're no longer shivering. On the shelf near the window sits a small clay cup, one she once made by hand in a pottery class. The rim is uneven, one side higher than the other, but that's why I love it. It's imperfect in a way that feels human, lived in. I take it down, turn it over in my hands, trace the little fingerprints left in the glaze. Her initials are carved at the base, faint but still there. I remember her saying that clay remembers touch, even after fire. That line returns to me now, and I smile. Maybe the same is true for us. Maybe we remember kindness, even after burning. I pour a little tea into that old cup, set it beside the candle. Not as a ritual, not as nostalgia, just as a quiet thank you. To what was, to what is. The window pane hums with a low murmur of wind. Outside, the rain has stopped completely, leaving the air damp and shining. A single drop slides down the glass, catching the candlelight as it moves. One last tear from the sky, or perhaps a benediction. I think back to the years when everything inside me was winter, when I couldn't imagine warmth returning, couldn't believe light would want to find me again. I used to sit in the same room with the curtains drawn, afraid to feel. The world outside went on raining, and I mistook that sound for loneliness. Now I understand it was always an invitation. Rain was never sadness. It was the world reminding me to breathe. The cup warms my hands again. The candle crackles faintly. My body, once restless, has learned stillness the way water learns calm after a storm. It doesn't mean there's no current, only that it moves in quieter ways. Sometimes, when I breathe deeply enough, I can feel her presence not as a ghost, but as warmth itself, the kind that lingers after a hug, after laughter. Maybe she isn't gone. Maybe she just became part of everything that comforts me now. The tea, the rain, the quiet that holds my name without needing to speak it. I lean back against the wall, closing my eyes. The rhythm of my breath matches the slow ticking of the clock. Each second stretches long, liquid, unhurried. I can feel my heartbeat in my fingertips, slow and steady. A rhythm that says, "You made it through." When I open my eyes again, the candle's wax has formed a small golden lake. I watch the light shimmer across it. It reminds me of the sea at dusk, calm, endless, forgiving. I write a few words in my journal before bed. The body remembers peace. Warmth returns when invited. The world forgives quietly. I close the notebook, can rest my hand on it for a while, feeling the faint vibration of life moving beneath everything, under wood, under breath, under time. Outside, a bird stirs in the branches. Somewhere, far off, a door closes gently. The air smells like rain and jasmine and night. I sip the last of my tea and let it linger on my tongue, the taste delicate and real dot, and in this small, golden-lit room, I realize that the heart, too, can learn warmth again. It just needs time and something gentle to hold. There is a doorway in my memory that I return to sometimes, not out of longing, but gratitude. It's painted blue, its edges softened by years of weather and touch. The metal handle is cool, slightly rusted, and whenever I imagine opening it, I can smell the faint scent of rain-soaked wood and jasmine from the garden just beyond. That door belonged to a house I once called home, or maybe to a time I did. I don't visit it in person anymore. The house isn't mine, perhaps not even standing as it was. But in memory, it remains untouched. The small porch light glowing like a watchful eye, the sound of wind chimes swaying above the step, the soft hum of her voice somewhere inside. It was there, beneath that doorway, that I learned what it meant to belong, not to a place, but to a moment. I close my eyes and see it clearly now. I'm standing there again, one hand resting on the frame, watching rain trace small paths across the glass of the door's tiny window. She's in the kitchen, humming quietly, unaware that I'm memorizing her. I remember the smell of cinnamon and wet leaves, the warmth of the air after the storm, the way her laughter made the house feel like it was breathing. I never said it aloud, but I think I knew then that it wouldn't last forever. Maybe that's why I remember so much. We tend to hold tighter to what we already sense we'll lose. When I open my eyes, the room around me feels different. Not sad, just still. The candle has burned low again, its light trembling like the memory itself. I take a deep breath, letting the image fade, but not vanish. It's strange how the heart knows when to release and when to keep. I don't need that doorway anymore, but I carry what it gave me. The sense that love, when it's true, doesn't end. It changes form, like rain becoming river, river becoming sea. Sometimes I think healing is a kind of return, not to the past, but to the self you were before you learned to guard your softness. When I picture that blue door now, I see not the house, but the version of me who stood there, uncertain, hopeful, open. I want to thank her. She loved without knowing if it was safe. She believed in warmth, even while standing in the rain. That takes courage. I reach for my journal and write a simple line. The door is gone, but what it opened remains dark. The words sit quietly on the page, neither heavy nor light, just true. I think about how doors work, how they divide and connect, how they both protect and invite. That house once protected me, yes, but it also taught me how to walk out when the time came. I remember that final morning, suitcase by the step, silence between us like a held breath. She stood in the doorway as I walked away, her hand resting on the same handle I'd touched countless times. Neither of us spoke. The rain had just started then, small hesitant drops falling onto the path. I remember thinking how strange it was that the same sky that witnessed our beginning also watched our goodbye. Now, years later, I can see that scene without pain. I can even smile at it. We were both learning to let go with grace, not because we stopped caring, but because we understood that some loves are meant to change shape, not die. Outside my window, the night deepens, and the scent of rain grows stronger again. It's the same air, I realize, the same sky that once hung above that blue doorway, the same rhythm of rain that has followed me from city to city. I like to think it remembers me too. I stand and open my own door now, this one plain and wooden, leading to a small balcony. The air rushes in, cool and damp. The city lights shimmer below like scattered lanterns. I step out barefoot, letting the wind lift the edges of my shirt. Somewhere nearby, a neighbor's window glows with soft yellow. Someone is boiling tea. Someone is humming a song I don't know. Life, it seems, always finds a way to continue singing. I close my eyes and whisper into the night. Thank you. I don't know exactly who I'm thanking. Maybe her, maybe the rain, maybe the years themselves for not giving up on me. Gratitude, I've learned, doesn't need a name. It only needs a moment to breathe. The air is cold, but not unkind. I take one last look at the sky before stepping back inside. The candle flickers as the draft follows me, then steadies again. I shut the door gently, not to close the world out, but to honor the space within. And for the first time, I realize healing isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about walking back through the doorways of memory, turning on the light and saying softly, finally, thank you for keeping me safe while I learn to begin again. The rain starts again, faint and even, tapping against the glass like a familiar knock. I sit back down beside the candle, wrap my hands around the warm cup, and let the sound fill the room. That old blue door still stands somewhere in my mind, open as it should be. The rain tonight is softer than a whisper, the kind that doesn't fall, just drifts. It gathers on the window in quiet constellations, glimmering faintly under the streetlight. I can hear it tapping on the metal balcony rail, a sound so familiar it feels like breathing. I've grown to love these hours, when the world outside blurs into gray and the only voice left is the one within Dot. It's in moments like this that I talk to her. Not out loud, not the way we used to, but in that secret inward way the heart remembers. There's no ritual, no letter, no photograph to guide me. Only the rain, only the silence that knows our names. Sometimes I imagine she's sitting across from me, in the chair opposite the window. She never looks exactly the same twice. Memory is kind that way, mercifully imprecise. Tonight her hair is longer, her eyes softer, her smile faint like candlelight. I don't ask her questions anymore. I've learned that some answers live better in quiet. Instead, I just tell her about small things. The new plant on the windowsill, the way the morning light hit the floorboards today, how the tea tasted slightly sweeter than yesterday. She listens. She always did. There's a peace in these imagined conversations, not because I believe she's truly here, but because speaking to her this way feels like speaking to the part of myself that loved, and still does. Love doesn't end when someone leaves. It simply changes form, learns to echo differently. The voice I once turned outward now speaks inward, gentler, slower, patient. I tell her about the walk I took after the rain last week, how the air smelled like new leaves and river water, how I found a small feather on the ground, caught between blades of grass. I didn't pick it up. I just watched how the wind tried to lift it, failed, then tried again. And I thought, that's me still trying. Even after the storm got in my mind, she smiles. Not sad, not distant, just knowing. I could almost hear her voice, that low, calm tone she used whenever I worried too much. You always were too kind to everything except yourself, she says. I laugh quietly. I'm working on it, I answer. And I mean it. The candle between us flickers. I imagine her leaning forward, elbows on knees, the way she did when listening intently. There's no grand message, no revelation, just a sense of being understood, even across time. Outside, the city hums distant traffic, someone closing a window, a child laughing down the street. Life keeps moving as it should. I used to resent that, how the world didn't pause when mine did. But now, I think that's what saves us. The world keeps singing so we can remember the melody when we're ready to join in again. I take another sip of tea. The warmth settles low in my chest. You know, I say softly to the empty chair, I'm not angry anymore. I don't even wish it had been different. I just wish you could see who I've become. In my imagination, she does. And for a fleeting moment, it feels real the way grace feels real when you stop expecting it. Her gaze is calm, steady, filled with a kind of affection that asks for nothing. I realize she doesn't need to be proud of me. It's enough that I finally am. The air in the room shifts slightly, a draft brushing the candle's flame. The wax pools, forming a small mirror of light. I see both of us there, her reflection fading into mine until we are one shape, one shadow. That's when it hits me. Maybe these conversations were never about her. Maybe they were always about learning to forgive myself. Forgiveness, I've discovered, isn't a single act. It's a conversation you return to again and again until the words no longer hurt, until silence feels like peace instead of absence. I close my eyes. Thank you, I whisper. Not for leaving, not for staying, but for being the lesson I didn't know I needed. For showing me that love isn't measured by time, but by what it leaves behind. When I open my eyes, the chair across from me is empty, as it should be. The candle still burns. The rain still falls. And yet, the room feels full, not with memory, but with something softer, something that feels like acceptance. I write a single line in my notebook before I go to bed. Tonight, I spoke to her again. We didn't need words. The rain translated for us. I set the pen down and blow out the candle. Smoke curls upward, fading into the dim air. The last of the light wavers in the window before disappearing into the dark. And just as sleep begins to pull me under, I feel it a quiet pulse, a warmth spreading through my chest. Not sorrow, not longing, just grace. The kind that arrives without sound, like a familiar voice carried on rain got by dawn. The storm has traveled on. The world wears its aftermath, like a sigh-quiet streets glimmering with leftover rain. A faint mist rising from rooftops. The kind of light that feels fragile, as if the sun itself is still unsure. I wake early, long before the city stirs, drawn by that soft, silver stillness that exists only between night and morning. The room is pale with reflected sky. My breath clouds the window as I lean close, watching the slow unraveling of clouds over the horizon. The rain has left everything new again, though nothing has really changed. The same trees, the same rooftops, the same cup on the sill. And yet, it feels different. Maybe because I am God. I stand by the open window and let the air move through me cool, damp, alive. The world smells of beginnings. Wet soil, jasmine, and the faint trace of smoke from a neighbor's breakfast fire. In the distance, a bird sings, its call simple, deliberate, without rush. It's not a song of celebration, just presence. I find myself breathing in time with it. The sky is still gray, but it's a softer gray, now the kind that carries light inside it. The clouds aren't fighting anymore. They're learning to rest. Watching them drift, I realize how much my body mirrors the weather, how the storms within me have grown gentler, how my own breath moves slower now, less like escape, more like prayer. I make tea and bring it back to the window. The first sip is warm enough to chase the chill from my hands. As I hold the cup, I think about how long I spent waiting for peace to arrive, as if it were something outside myself, something that would come knocking one day. But peace, I see now, doesn't arrive. It unfolds like light through fog. It's been here all along, waiting for me to stop resisting. The world outside begins to wake. A woman in a red coat walks her dog past the gate, the leash glinting with drops of rain. The dog pauses to sniff at a puddle, then shakes itself free. A delivery truck hums somewhere down the road, its sound echoing between wet buildings. Life resumes, unbothered, unceremonious. And I find comfort in that ordinariness. There's something healing about the way mornings return without asking permission. I take another sip and let my thoughts wander to the word calm. It used to feel distant, unreachable, like a place meant for other people. But now it feels closer, quieter, more human. Calm isn't the absence of storms. It's learning to float when they come. It's the knowing that clouds will break, that breath will steady, that even the hardest nights end in light. On the table, my journal lies open to a half-filled page. Last night's words rest there like footprints on damp earth. I pick up the pen, not to finish the sentence, but to begin a new one. The sky learns calm by remembering every storm it has survived. The ink bleeds slightly into the paper, a small imperfection, a quiet truth. I trace it with my fingertip until it fades. Outside, the clouds shift again, parting just enough to let a single ray of sunlight touch the edge of a nearby roof. It glints for a moment, then disappears. I smile. That's all light ever promises. A glimpse, a reminder. It doesn't need to stay. It only needs to return. I step onto the balcony with my cup in hand. The air is cool against my skin, carrying the scent of a night's rain. Below, puddles shimmer like fragments of sky. I close my eyes and let the faint warmth of the sun rest on my face. Somewhere, a clock chimes 7. The sound echoes softly, folding into the quiet like a heartbeat. For the first time in years, I feel entirely still. Not empty, not waiting. Just here. The ache that used to sit heavy in my chest now feels like a small, smooth stone, something I can carry without fear. I think of her again, but not as absence. More like wind, unseen yet everywhere. I whisper into the morning air, I'm okay. It's not a declaration, just an acknowledgement. A truth simple enough to hold dot. The wind moves through the trees in answer, scattering droplets from the leaves. They fall in slow arcs, catching light before they vanish into the earth. I watch them fall one by one and realize I'm smiling. The sky above me stretches wider now, pale, calm, forgiving. The rain has done its work, and in its quiet wake, I feel a kind of stillness that isn't fragile anymore. It's steady, rooted. Whole dot inside, the candle from last night has gone out, but the scent of wax and jasmine still lingers in the air. I let it stay, a trace of warmth in the new day. I don't rush to clean it, don't rush to move on. Not everything gentle needs to be erased. I sip the last of my tea and watch the sunlight shift across the floorboards. It's a small thing, barely there, but it's enough. Healing, I realize, rarely announces itself. It just waits quietly, like dawn, for you to notice you're no longer lost in the dark. I start the morning with water. Not thoughts, not plans, just water. The kettle hums, its quiet song living in the small space between sleep and waking. While it warms, I wash last night's cup. The porcelain is thin, almost translucent at the rim, and I turn it slowly in my hands under the tap. The stream is lukewarm at first, then warmer, then just right. A small kindness I can choose. Soap gathers in soft clouds, light as breath. I circle the sponge along the inner curve, listening to the faint porcelain whisper it makes, feeling the simple pleasure of something becoming clean. I rinse the cup and set it on the rack, watching droplets gather at the lip and fall, one by one. It feels like a ceremony with no audience, and I realize I don't need one. The cup does not thank me. The morning does not change color, but inside my chest, something loosens, quiet as fabric unwrinkling. Maybe this is a language the hands have always known. Do one small gentle thing and let the heart overhear. The kettle clicks. I pour the first cup of jasmine tea and carry it to the window. Outside, the street wears the faint sheen of last night's mist. A cyclist glides by, coat fluttering like a dark wing. Somewhere below, a neighbor shakes crumbs from a tablecloth, a soft domestic snow. I drink and feel warmth trace a path down my throat, then bloom behind my ribs. It doesn't push the ache away. It simply sits beside it, a considerate guest. On the back of the chair waits the wool blanket I forgot to fold. I lift it and feel its weight, the remembered heat of other nights. I spread it across the bed and smooth it with both palms, moving from the center outward, as if I'm teaching the fabric how to lie calmly. There was a time I would have left it crumpled for days, certain that a tidy bed could not persuade a wild heart. But I am learning that order is not a denial of sorrow. It is a railing to hold as you walk. Corner to corner, I fold the blanket in two, and again, the edges meeting like a gentle handshake. The wool breathes a faint scent of cedar from the chest, where I keep it in summer. I tuck the blanket at the foot of the bed and pause, noticing the small bright line the morning leaves on the quilt. It feels like grace measured in inches. I move to the windowsill and greet the plant I've nearly lost twice, a pothos whose vines trail like soft green punctuation. I press my finger into the soil. It is cool and slightly dry. Thirsty, I say, and the word sounds less like a diagnosis than an invitation. I fetch the watering can, Tilt it until the thin silver stream threads into the pot. The plant does not shiver, does not smile. It simply darkens its soil and drinks. I turn the pot a quarter turn so the leaves can find a different sun. In its slow green way, the plant teaches me patience, not as endurance, but as companionship with time. While I'm there, I wipe the windowsill with a damp cloth. Dust lifts and swirls, a small galaxy dissolving into dampness. I trace the groove where the frame meets the glass and think about fault lines, the places where the world joins itself and remembers the scene. I used to think healing meant sealing all seams, making everything seamless, unmarked. Now I think about kintsugi, gold in the broken lines. I don't own such a bowl, but I carry the idea that mending is not about erasing. It is about lighting the cracks from within. On the table sits the stone from the river. I rinse it too, because why not? Because it has been touched by my hands and the air and the night. The water unlocks its deeper gray, a slate that looks almost blue, like the face of a calm evening sea. I place it back on the sill and feel its small weight as a vote for steadiness. I wipe the table, gather the spent candle stubs, trim the new wick. These are not acts of transformation. They are acts of tending. Tending does not insist. Tending returns. Every morning becomes a loop I can step into, a simple route back to my breath. When the cup is empty, I wash it again. The same motions, the same ghost of soap. I stack the drying plate, fold the dish towel over the oven handle, align the spoon with the edge of the sink. It feels, I realize, like prayer without words, humble, repetitive, faithful. If there is holiness in this room, it is held inside these small obediences to care. I pull open the top drawer and find the loose buttons I keep in a jar. The glass clinks softly as I pour them into my palm. Tiny moons, each with its own face. A sweater has been waiting on the back of the chair with one missing. I thread a needle slowly, wetting the end between my lips the way someone once showed me, not because it's necessary, but because it connects me to hands that once taught mine. I anchor the thread and begin. Through, across, a simple rhythm that could lull a heart. When I'm done, I run my finger over the button and give it the gentlest tug. Secure, present. A small circle returned to its place, dot by the sink. A bowl holds 3 lemons. I wash them, though they are not dirty. The pebbled skin releases bright scent with the pressure of my thumbs. I slice one and set the wedges beside the stove, clatter in the quiet of the room. The acts add up to something that isn't quite accomplishment and isn't quite distraction. It is attention, the difference between passing through a morning and letting a morning pass through you. I water the plant in the corner that always seems to sulk. I open the balcony door to shake the mat. I place the shoes side by side so they can rest like conversation partners. I pick up the book I've been slowly reading and dust the top edge with a sleeve. I lift the framed photo from the shelf, not of her, but of the ocean, and wipe the glass until it holds the light without interruption. All of it is small. All of it is mending. When I pause, the room feels subtly different, as if it has exhaled. My breathing matches it. The ache is still here, an old companion, but it is quiet, wrapped in the soft gauze of usefulness. Grief, I think, grows spikes when it sits too long in still air. Give it a task, and it sets them down. Give it a cup to wash, a blanket to fold, a leaf to turn toward light. I return to the table and write a few lines in my journal. Wash the cup to learn warmth. Fold the blanket to learn gentleness. Water the plant to learn patience. Mend the button to learn return. Light the candle to learn that small light is still light. The words look almost childish in their simplicity, and I love them for it. Somewhere along the way, we convinced ourselves that complex answers heal complex pain. But the body knows otherwise. It listens to hands more than to speeches. I blow on the ink until it dries, then close the journal with a soft thud that sounds like agreement. Outside, a thin rain begins again. Not a storm, just a sheen. The leaves glitter. The railing ticks. I stand in the doorway and let a few drops touch my forearm. Cool and clean and so alive, it makes me laugh. These are the lessons the morning leaves me with. That wholeness can be practiced. That mercy can be folded, poured, threaded, turned, lit. That the heart learns by doing what the hands already know. I step back inside and, without thinking, place the cup upside down on the rack so it can dry completely. It is such a small act that I nearly miss the soft voice it carries. You are cared for. And for a moment, perfectly ordinary and perfectly enough, I am dot by afternoon. The rain has quieted to a memory, a faint shimmer left on leaves and glass. The world smells clean again, the kind of freshness that arrives after hours of patient washing. I step outside for a walk, not to go anywhere, just to listen to what the day has to say. The streets are almost empty. Puddles collect the light, mirroring thin threads of cloud drifting slowly across the sky. I walk without destination, hands in pockets, the wind brushing against my sleeves like a familiar companion. Every so often, a droplet slips from a branch, landing softly on my cheek. I don't wipe it away. The air feels lighter now, though the sky is still heavy with color. It's the kind of gray that comforts more than saddens, a gray that hums with peace. As I pass by a row of old buildings, their windows half open to let the dampness out, I catch glimpses of lives unfolding. A woman watering her plants. A man reading a newspaper with glasses perched low on his nose. A cat asleep on a windowsill. The smallness of it all feels sacred. Life doesn't need to be loud to be beautiful. There's a park up ahead, not large, just a patch of green, tucked between two narrow streets. The grass is darker after the rain, and the benches still glisten. I sit on one, letting the wood press its coolness through my coat. A soft breeze carries the faint perfume of wet earth and distant tea. It reminds me of her again, not in the sharp way it used to, but as a tender presence that no longer aches. I take out my small notebook, the one I now carry everywhere, and flip to a blank page. I've learned that some thoughts don't ask to be spoken. They simply want a place to rest. I write. There are quiet places inside us, waiting to be visited again. And I realize that this moment of stillness, this seat in the park, this open page is one of them. A child runs past, chasing after a paper boat floating through a puddle. The boat tips, rights itself, continues. The child laughs, unbothered by its fragility. I smile. How easily children forgive what life calls imperfection. How naturally they let go. Perhaps healing is remembering that kind of trust, believing the boat will find its way, even if the water is shallow. The clouds above shift again, letting a pale ray of sun spill across the path. It touches the puddles, turning them briefly into small mirrors of gold. The warmth lands on my hands, and for a moment, I hold them up to it as if to greet the day properly. I think of all the times I walked through storms, wishing only for light, not realizing that the rain itself was teaching me how to see it. After a while, I stand and wander toward the edge of the park, where an old willow droops its branches, low enough to touch the ground. I brush my fingers through the hanging leaves. They are damp, pliant, forgiving. Beneath the tree, the air feels different, quieter, more private. It's the kind of place one could come to make peace with things that have long gone unsaid. I close my eyes and picture her face once more, not in sorrow, but as part of the soft landscape of my memory. I imagine placing a small candle at her feet, if only in thought. "Thank you," I whisper, "for what we were, for what we became." The words drift into the air and dissolve, but their warmth lingers. It strikes me how often apologies and gratitude are the same thing, spoken in different weather. Saying thank you to the past feels a lot like saying sorry for how hard you once tried to hold it still. But both mean the same. I loved you. I'm still learning how to. When I open my eyes again, a leaf has fallen onto my shoulder, light, trembling, perfect in its impermanence. I lift it gently and lay it at the base of the tree, a simple offering to the moment, a way of saying, I was here. The wind shifts, carrying the faint sound of chimes from somewhere down the street. The melody is uneven, imperfect, but lovely, each note brushing against the air like a soft reminder that beauty doesn't need precision. It only needs presence. I begin walking home slowly, retracing the same streets now touched with a little more light. Each familiar corner feels slightly transformed. The buildings a shade warmer, the sky less distant. The world hasn't changed, of course. Only the way I'm looking at it. When I reach my door, I pause before going inside. The wood is warm under my palm. For a moment, I simply stand there, breathing in the air of both outside and in, a threshold of two worlds. I whisper to the silence, I forgive you. I'm not sure who I mean, myself, the years, the rain, but it doesn't matter. The words feel right. They open something. Inside, the candle from last night still sits on the table, half burned but steady. I light it again. Its flame rises, small and sure. The room fills with a golden quiet. I pour a new cup of tea, set it beside the window, and sit down, the scent of jasmine curling into the air. Outside, the willow sways. Inside, the light deepens. Between them, I breathe, a small act of belonging that feels like prayer. And for a moment, I sense the world whispering back, you have come home, not to a place, but to yourself. It happens quietly, the way grace always does. No music, no fanfare, no sudden moment of understanding. Just a soft awareness that rises like mist from the heart. A realization so gentle, you almost miss it. I'm sitting by the window again, watching the rain begin its evening return. When it arrives, Grace, it doesn't feel like joy. Not quite. Joy is brighter, louder, sometimes fleeting. Grace is humbler. It moves through you like warmth spreading in cool water, slow and certain. It fills the small cracks you stopped noticing, smooths the sharp edges you thought would never dull. It doesn't erase anything. It simply teaches you how to live with what remains. The rain outside is steady, the kind that falls straight down in fine silvery lines. Each drop lands softly, barely disturbing the puddles below. I rest my chin on my knees and listen. The world seems to breathe with it. Cars passing at half speed, footsteps careful and quiet, the low hum of distant thunder curling through the clouds. The candle beside me trembles, its flame reflected twice, once on the glass, once in my eyes. I realize that the ache I've carried for so long has changed its shape. It's lighter now, not because it's gone, but because I've stopped trying to make it disappear. It's part of me, a softer part, no longer a wound, but a garden. Even grief can grow flowers if you let it rest in the sun long enough. There's a kind of beauty that only arrives when you stop searching for it. I think of how many nights I spent trying to force meaning from the pain, as if it were a puzzle to solve. But pain isn't a riddle. It's a river. You don't need to find its source. You only need to float and let it carry you until the current gentles. On the table lies a small white envelope, blank, unsealed. I'd found it in a drawer earlier, tucked between old photographs. I pick it up now, feeling its weightless simplicity. I take my pen and write a single word across the front. Grace, not addressed to anyone, not even to her. Maybe to the air, Maybe to the version of me who needed it most. I don't open it. I just hold it, let the paper warm between my palms. The gesture is enough. Some letters are not meant to be sent, they're meant to be felt. The rain grows softer still, and the world seems to slow in time with it. I close my eyes and listen again, the rhythm like a heartbeat, like breath, like forgiveness. When I was younger, I thought grace was something given, a divine gift, something you had to earn by enduring enough. Now I know it's quieter than that. Grace isn't given or earned. It's recognized. It's what happens when the heart finally stops clenching long enough to let the light in. I open my eyes. The candle has burned low, its wax pooling in a small golden lake. I stare into it and think of all the ways light finds us in reflections, in silence, in faces we've had to let go. It doesn't ask for attention. It just arrives and stays, patiently, until we remember to look. A breeze slips through the slightly open window, cool and damp with rain. It brushes my skin, smells of cedar and something faintly sweet. The curtain sways, brushing against my hand like a friendly whisper. I smile. On the other side of the street, a man closes his umbrella and pauses under a street lamp. The light catches the wet shoulders of his coat, turns the falling rain into strings of silver. For a second, the scene looks like something from a film, unreal and perfect. Then he moves on, and the spell dissolves. But the peace it leaves behind doesn't. I take a sip of my tea, now lukewarm, but still fragrant, and think, maybe that's what grace is too. The quiet after something beautiful has passed. The peace that lingers, asking for nothing. The room around me hums with small sounds, the tick of the clock, the sigh of the wind, the faint settling of wood as the air cools. Everything seems alive, aware. Even the silence feels full. I run my thumb along the edge of the journal on the table, feeling the grooves left by earlier words. Every page, even the blank ones, feels like proof that I have kept going. I think of her once more, her voice, her warmth, her endless patience with my storms. But this time, the memory doesn't feel like a weight. It feels like a window left open. I whisper, "Thank you," though I don't know if I mean it for her, or for the rain, or for the person I've become through all of it. Maybe for all three. Outside, the rain pauses just for a moment, as if the world itself has stopped to listen. The stillness is so complete, it almost glows. Then, softly, it begins again. I exhale. Somewhere deep inside me, the tightness I've carried for years finally lets go. Not all at once, just enough to notice. Enough to breathe freely. Grace, I realize, doesn't arrive with thunder or revelation. It arrives like rain in whispers, in pauses, in the quiet insistence that you are still here, still alive, still capable of softness. And in that knowing, I close my eyes and let the sound of the rain carry me home. The rain has drifted into a fine mist, more air than water, a quiet breath passing over the rooftops. It clings to everything: leaves, glass, the faint edges of my reflection in the window. The candle beside me burns low, its light softer now, almost shy. I'm not sad tonight, just thoughtful, like someone who has learned to listen to what endings really sound like. Letting go, I've come to see, isn't a single act. It's a rhythm, a dance you learn slowly, one small step after another. You loosen your grip on one thing, and then another. Some things you release easily. Others stay, stubborn as rain on glass, until time itself teaches your fingers to open. I used to think letting go meant losing. It used to sound like emptiness, like being left behind. But now, sitting here with the scent of rain and jasmine between breaths, I understand it differently. Letting go isn't the same as losing. It's learning how to hold without gripping. It's loving without owning. It's remembering without ache. The window hums softly with wind. Outside, The street lamp glows through the mist, its light stretching into the fog like a hand reaching for something it no longer needs to touch. I rest my head against the glass and watch. The world looks gentler when blurred. Every edge softens. Every distance feels closer. Maybe that's how forgiveness works, too, not by forgetting, but by allowing the sharpness to fade until what's left is only shape and light. I think of her again, but she no longer feels far away. She's not a ghost haunting my nights, not a shadow in the rain. She's simply a story one I've already lived, one I can now tell without flinching. A chapter written in ink that no longer bleeds. I can look at her face in memory and feel gratitude more than grief. That, I think, is the quiet miracle of time. It doesn't erase. It transforms. On the table, my journal lies open. The last page is nearly full. A map of every thought the rain has taught me. I pick up the pen and write one line, small and deliberate. Letting go is not the end of love. It's how love learns to breathe. The ink glistens for a moment before sinking into the page. I read the words back slowly, and they feel true in a way that doesn't need proof. I close the book and trace its cover with my fingertips. The leather is worn smooth at the corners, touched, handled, kept. I used to be afraid of wear, of things losing their shine. But maybe wear is just the mark of time well held. Maybe love, too, is meant to leave fingerprints. The candle flickers again, drawing my gaze. Its flame leans toward the window, as if curious about the world beyond the glass. I whisper, "You'll go out soon," and it sways gently in answer, as if to say, "Yes, but that's all right." And I realize, maybe that's what this whole journey has been about. Learning to say, "That's all right." To let the flame fade without mourning its brightness. To trust that the dark isn't punishment, but rest. To believe that what's meant to stay will return, in its own way, in its own season. The rain outside slows to a drizzle, barely audible now. Somewhere down the street, a door closes, and the sound echoes like a soft punctuation mark at the end of a long sentence. I smile. Endings, I've found, are quieter than I expected. They don't demand applause. They just arrive, gentle as dusk, and ask to be accepted. I stand and stretch, feeling the weight of stillness in my limbs. My reflection meets me in the glass. Older, perhaps, but not in the way age measures. Softer around the eyes, calmer in the mouth. The kind of softness that only comes from surviving yourself and still choosing kindness. I reach out and rest my hand against the cool window pane. For a moment, it feels like I'm touching the rain itself, that thin space between what's outside and what's within. Maybe that's where letting go truly happens. In the space between the fingertip and the glass, between the past and the breath you're taking right now. Outside, the street lamp's glow begins to fade as dawn hints at the edge of the sky. The first pale light stretches across the rooftops, quiet and sure. I blow out the candle. Smoke curls upward, thin and graceful, vanishing into the gray. The smell of extinguished wax lingers, sweet and fleeting. I open the window a little wider. The air that enters is cool, but not cold. The kind of air that wakes you without startling you. I inhale deeply, and with it comes everything. The scent of wet pavement, the faint sweetness of earth, the hush of an ending becoming a beginning. I whisper one last thank you, to her, to the rain, to the endless patience of time. Not because everything is perfect now, but because it doesn't need to be. Because peace has finally stopped feeling like a place I need to reach, and started feeling like the way I walk. The mist clears a little more. The city exhales. Somewhere, a bird begins to sing hesitant, single notes threading through the air. I listen until it fades into the hum of morning dot, and for the first time in years, I realize I am not holding on. I am simply here, Hands open, heart quiet, ready for whatever comes next. Night returns. But it feels different now. Not heavy, not sorrowful, just gentle, like a soft blanket pulled over a resting world. The rain outside has thinned to a whisper, the kind that doesn't disturb but soothes. Through the window, the city glows faintly beneath silver clouds, its lights blurred by the mist. I light the last candle from the drawer, a small one, almost finished, and place it on the table beside the cup. The wax catches easily, and the flame steadies as if it knows this room by heart. It's quiet enough to hear the rain breathe. Each drop lands with purpose, unhurried. The clock ticks softly on the shelf, marking time I no longer wish to chase. I sip my tea, now more out of ritual than need, and taste something I can't quite name. Maybe peace, maybe memory. For so long, I thought healing would feel like triumph, a sunrise breaking after a long storm, some grand moment of clarity. But sitting here in this dim golden light, I know now it's humbler than that. Healing feels like this, a calm body, a slow breath, a night that asks for nothing. It feels like recognizing yourself in the quiet and realizing you're finally at ease in your own company. The window holds my reflection again, faint, soft-edged, merging with the world outside. I see the candle beside it, the cup, the small plant leaning toward what little light remains. The reflection of my eyes flickers with the flame, and for a moment, I look both younger and older, like time has folded itself to meet me halfway. I smile, not the kind that lifts the mouth, but the kind that begins somewhere deeper, where gratitude lives. I think of all the nights I sat here before, trying to fill the silence with questions. Why did she leave? When will it stop hurting? What did I do wrong? But the rain never answered, and I see now why. Because the rain isn't there to explain. It's there to accompany. Some things aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be lived through, softened, and released. I glance at my journal, now filled from cover to cover. Its pages have become a map of this quiet journey. The grief, the stillness, the rain that witnessed it all. I run a hand over its cover and whisper, "Thank you," as if to an old friend. The leather feels warm beneath my palm, holding the weight of every word I dared to write. The candle's flame dips, then steadies again, and the room breathes with it. Everything around me glows in shades of amber and silver. The wooden floor, the folds of the curtain, the rim of the cup. There's beauty in this smallness, in this moment that doesn't need to be more than what it is. Outside, the rain slows further until it's barely there, a hush beneath the hum of the night. The world, washed and tired, seems ready to rest. I lean back in the chair, close my eyes, and let the rhythm of it all move through me. The faint ticking of time, the distant sigh of wind, the echo of my own heartbeat syncing with the weather, and somewhere within that rhythm, I feel her again. Not as memory this time, not as absence, but as warmth, as if she's become part of everything gentle that remains. The sound of rain, the calm in my breath, the softness of the candlelight. I realize she never really left. She just changed places, moved from the world outside to the quiet within. I open my eyes. The candle's reflection dances in the window, the flame small but unyielding. Outside, a single streetlight gleams on the wet pavement, and in it, the faint shimmer of moving water. The city is still awake, though it whispers now instead of speaking. Everything seems to agree. There's nothing left to fix, only to rest. I set my cup down, half finished, and lean forward to watch the candle's final glow. The wax has nearly melted away, pooling around the wick like a small golden lake. The flame flickers once, twice, then steadies, a small defiance against the dark. I find myself smiling again. The air carries the faint scent of jasmine and smoke. It smells like endings, Yes, but also like beginnings waiting quietly. I whisper to the room, I'm ready. Not for anything specific, just for life, in whatever small, imperfect, beautiful form it arrives next. The candle burns lower. The rain hums softly. Somewhere in the distance, a clock strikes midnight, its echo gentle as a heartbeat. I sit still, eyes on the flame, until the wick sighs and the light fades, leaving only the reflection of the city's silver glow. The darkness is kind. It doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels full of breath, of memory, of peace. The window catches one last shimmer from the street below, a faint golden curve that could almost be a smile. And in that moment, I understand. Closure doesn't always mean an ending. Sometimes it simply means the heart has learned how to stay open, even in the rain, even in the dark. I take a long breath, slow and deep. The room exhales with me, dots somewhere beyond the mist. Dawn is already preparing its light. And here, in this quiet room, I rest. Not waiting, not wanting, just being. The candle is out. The rain continues its soft song, dot and peace. At last, feels like home.